I have a better excuse, about $40,000 better. When a car enthusiast says that they love cars, we all mean something just a little bit different. For me, my love for the automobile is expressed most explicitly when I am taking one on a very, very long road trip, especially if it's a car that has no business being transportation in that way. A sports car, a supercar, driving at an insanely long distance, to me is perfection. If I could do anything with any of my cars tomorrow, it'd be hop in one and drive it a very, very long way. And if you search for the hashtag Lambo road trip on Instagram, you'll see a ton of drives that I've taken Lamborghinis on, things like that. About 5.5 years ago, my LP640 coupe had just finished being painted Verde Draco in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I didn't want to ship it home. I wanted to go out there and road trip the car home. And at the same time, a friend of mine named Nick, who's been in several VINwiki car stories, he's the guy I worked with at Lamborghini Atlanta that bought his first motorcycle and immediately launched himself into the back of a Porsche Panamera. We spent the night getting his face all stitched up. He's also the guy that now runs Audi of Birmingham, and he figured out this ridiculous cheap lease back in February on RS e-tron GTs. And so I love Nick, he's a wonderful friend. And at the time, he was in the process of buying one of his dream cars, a 2014 Aston Martin Vanquish, out of a dealership in Los Angeles. And so it kind of worked perfectly because we could both, he and I, fly to LA. He was coming out of Birmingham, me from Atlanta. We land there, pick up his Vanquish, road trip it to Scottsdale to get my LP640, and Doug Tabbitt from Switch Cars decided he wanted to fly in and go on a Lambo road trip with me. And so he flew into Scottsdale to meet us there, and Tom Park, another veteran of the VINwiki storytelling community, was along for the ride as well in his GT3 Touring. We did that amazing drive. I had a blast. I mean, the headlight went out immediately. There were a bunch of issues with the car. That is just kind of what goes with the territory when it had been down, in that case, for about 10 months since the last time I had seen it. We eventually made it home. Everybody had a good time. Doug even happened upon, at a McDonald's parking lot, Seascape, an excursion converted into being kind of a boat thing for SEMA that he bought, owned for a little while, told some great stories about. Recently, I was offered kind of for Doug to return the favor. About 2 years ago, Doug was in the market for a Lamborghini Diablo, and what he really wanted was an early Eurovin non-airbag SV. Pop-up headlights, just a really, really cool car, kind of a driver's version of a Diablo. And honestly, what he was looking for was a kind of a rough one like the one that I bought a year ago. But at the time, 2 years ago, there just wasn't anything like that available. But at that time, I was in the process of working a deal on an '01 US Diablo 6-liter car out of Germany through Alex Hess, who'd helped me buy the red Murcielago SV a couple of years earlier than that. And to be honest with you, I don't fit in a Diablo 6-liter. They've got a much thicker dash with a passenger airbag, thicker door cards, thicker seats. I mean, it's a very, very tight fit. There's a huge padding along the A-pillar up to the roof. I am contacting the car in every possible way just to sit in it, but it's a beautiful car, an Arancio Atlas, and it actually had a Viola interior. Now, if you looked at it, you would say it's gray, but if somebody said, hey, it's purple, you say, it's a little bit purple. And so a very, very special one-of-one car in pretty good shape, kind of a driver quality thing, a little bit of paint work. As Doug started entering the market, the wisest thing to do if you can't find the car that you're looking for, but you believe that the market is generally going to go up, is buy something else that's similar enough that it's going to follow the same trend. So at some point, you could kind of have a lateral move. I said, Doug, why don't you just buy this car, save me from having to figure out the finances. You can enjoy it. I'll be all right. I'll find another Diablo someday. And I did. And so Doug bought that car, imported it from Germany, has had a great time with it, but he started to notice a grinding in, I think, second or third gear. And he decided that even though he was in Ohio, the transmission should be rebuilt in one of the most nationally reputable shops, Fast Cars in Redondo Beach, California, just down the road from the Portofino. And so he decided, I guess about 9 months ago, to ship the car there. They pulled the whole drivetrain, fixed the transmission, and did everything other while you're in there kind of stuff, which became a $50,000 or $60,000 bill. But Fast Cars is amazing, and so they've always got a ton of interesting stuff in there. In fact, the Diablo was probably the least interesting car among all the stuff that they're doing to maintain cars for Mille Miglia, restore significant cars. Just an amazing place to be if you ever have the chance to stop by. Doug also decided that rather than trying to ship the car home, he would try to road trip it back. And the timing was kind of coincidental because it was just before the Hilton Head Concours d'Elegance. And I'd already committed to go back there. Last year, I was their featured Velocity Collector, a tremendous honor. And Tyler Hoover was going to be the Velocity Collector this year. So he was going to be there. Freddie was coming up. A lot of our friends were going to be there. And so it felt like a great idea to make that the ultimate destination, with Atlanta being a stopover for some trick-or-treating at Halloween to pick up my Bugatti. And then the two cars would eventually make make it all the way to the East Coast. It was going to be a coast-to-coast drive, which generally takes 2.5 to 3 days if you're only going to drive 12 to 15 hours a day, stop for the night. He and I both flew. We met at LAX, took an Uber to Fast Cars in Redondo, picked up the Diablo. It was parked right next to a gorgeous F40. We walked around the shop, amazing tour, just a really, really, really cool place. And they had done a ton of work to Doug's car. Now, anytime you've done that, there's always a trepidation, some nervousness about what's going to happen immediately as you start driving it. And that was a valid concern because almost immediately the car started to misfire through some check engine codes. There was still kind of a grinding in the front diff that he had described to them, but they hadn't been able to replicate, of course. We did not get off to a good start, and that always begs the question, do you circle back and take the car back to them, let them fix it again, and we fly home, or what, do we wait? You know, it was just a very, very uncertain thing. But we generally decided that the misfires were probably due to the fact that the car had lived most of its life under 93 octane conditions, and this was 91 octane gas. Who knows, but you know, generally, when it was running right, it was running right enough that we didn't believe that there was something terribly, terribly wrong. We decided, he really decided, I'm just along for the ride at this point, to press on, and for the first night we made it to Flagstaff in the pouring, pouring rain. Grabbed an OBD scanner because neither of us brought one, and we were able to pull all the codes, and it was a ton of things. It was, you know, misfires, obviously, lean conditions, evaporative errors, secondary air injection, things like that. It was not well, but it was generally okay enough, but usually when we would stop, the car would just immediately die. Now, one thing that I love to do on road trips is accumulate stickers. We did it on the Cayennes all the way up to the North Pole and back. And so I had started, every time I'd go into a gas station, buying whatever stickers they had from the local city or state or whatever, and putting them along the rear wing of the car, which I thought looked amazing. Unfortunately, Doug didn't mind it, and so we continued on, and now eventually it became all the way to Hilton Head. So we kind of covered the entirety of the country in stickers on the wing of this car, while it's being covered in dirt and bugs and everything else, and obviously the internal road trip shrapnel of wrappers and bottles and things like that. And to me, that is when a car just looks at its best. Now, as I said, I don't fit in this car, so I had packed lidocaine patches for my back, Tylenol, prescription pain medicines that I've needed after some of these trips, and ultimately, though, I was okay. I mean, when I'm driving this car, my knee is against the dash, the big center console, the steering wheel, the wiper stalk, everything. My head's against the roof and the padding and all. So it is snug. But I did okay. I mean, it hurt, but at the end of the day, I was all right, and I was able to walk each evening as we got home. And, you know, the car stumbled, it did its things, and it was not totally happy, but it got better over time. We sustained some very impressive speeds, even though I then came to find out that Doug still had 2015 tires on this car, which is very ill-advised. Now, glass houses, I shouldn't be throwing stones because the tires are a little bit old on my Bugatti, but I have a better excuse, about $40,000 better. But at the end of the day, we did okay. Of course, we were on Pirelli tires, which is a good segue into our sponsor for this video, which is Bridgestone tires. Now, of course, all Lamborghinis have been put on Pirelli tires for decades and decades, but if you buy one new today, it will have Bridgestone tires because Bridgestone is now the OEM supplier for lots of brands, including Lamborghini. But for these older all-wheel drive cars, the exact sizes are pretty much only available in Pirellis, and if you put Michelins or anything else, you'll blow up the diffs, and so that's best avoided. We were on the Pirelli tires, but we're very appreciative of the Potenza range of sports car and supercar tires from Bridgestone, as well as their Dueler Ascent all-terrain tires that are going on my Cayenne today, in fact, as this video rolls out. We made it back eventually, had a great drive, and again, it's just such an awesome way to see the country and experience a car that you love. I fell in love with the 6.0, and even though I was very excited to get back to my Diablo with a little bit more headroom, Wednesday night we did make it into Atlanta and had both orange Diablos together, which was super duper cool. And I think in this period of owning the car, Doug has very much fallen in love with the 6-liter car. He wasn't interested in me throwing him a little cash to come back into the rougher SV with all the Yakuza trim and things like that. But we had a blast. He put a jack-o'-lantern face on the Diablo for Halloween. I actually had one from a previous show that I had on my car, but my car got very jealous immediately. We had taken both of them to lunch together. We were going to go take some pictures with Larry from Winning Automotive Photography, and mine decided to let its parking brake explode. Not because it was left on, it just seemed to fall apart. It cracked in half, and it's not like a normal second caliper parking brake. It's a drum brake that's on the inside of the hub, and so it just locked in place, refused to move, and couldn't be pulled out to do trick-or-treating with the kids. But At the end of the day, it wasn't that complicated. A simple house call from the guys at DC Motor Works was all we needed. And fortunately, that was also all that Doug's car needed. He had taken it over to see Cameron that morning, and they had found that a vacuum hose and a hose to the secondary air pump had been disconnected. And so that was the reason that it was running so poorly when it ran poorly, and now it was running great. So the next morning, I got in the Bugatti and we headed out to the Hilton Head Concours d'Elegance. Having a Lambo road trip to be immediately followed by a Bugatti road trip, there was nothing better. And I gotta say, I mean, coming out of the Diablo and into the Bugatti, I mean, the Veyron is such a brilliant long-distance touring car. Obviously, it's brutally fast and it handles quite well, but it is heavy, but it's very comfortable. The visibility is great. There's a little bit of room to pack, not much more than a Diablo, maybe even less. But at the end of the day, we made it to Hilton Head to enjoy the Concours d'Elegance. The sticker array on the back of the Diablo was completed, and the Veyron won Best in Class for 2000's Supercars. It was against a beautiful spiker, Lauren Fix's Ford GT, which was immaculate and perfect, and so my car was very much not those things, still covered in bugs with all my stuff in it, but they awarded me a trophy for the Best in Class, which was a huge honor and a lovely thing to put on the shelf back there. It was also nice to talk to Tyler, because he had just announced that he had joined the Veyron Club. Actually, I'll kind of spill the beans now. The car has made it back to Wichita after some difficulty and calamity, but overall, he is a very, very happy Bugatti owner, despite some of the commenters in his videos not being so happy that he had to give up the Countach and the Z8 to do so. We talked to Freddie a lot, even talked about some possible Car Trek premises and things that we might be able to do next year. I continue to prod in that direction, hoping that we can do some more Car Trek, because it is just as fun as it looks, and I appreciate that all of you are excited that it might come back soon. The perfect series of road trips, an amazing Lambo road trip, a Bugatti road trip, a trophy to show for it, and they all made it back home unscathed. And once again, we'd like to thank Bridgestone for their support of the VINwiki channel this year and on into 2025. We love their Potenza range of tires for sports cars and supercars, but I'm most excited right now about their Dueler Ascent, the new all-terrain tire that they're releasing that is going to be the perfect upgrade for roadworthiness on my Cayenne, but while I still maintain all of the off-road capability. So I'll talk more about those tires this month, but thank them for their support of VINwiki by clicking on the link in the description right now to learn more about the Bridgestone range of tires.